They always say grief reveals who people really are. But I never imagined it would be him. My husband, the man I shared 27 years of my life with, who watched me build everything from scratch, the gallery, the house, the reputation, turned out to be the one chiseling away at it behind my back. And it all came to light in the cold sterility of a hospital room, was recovering from a fall down our marble staircase. The doctors called it an accident. He said it was clumsiness. But I remember the flash of his hand at the top step. I remember the silence that followed. And most of all, I remember what he whispered to the nurse when he thought I was sedated, "She's dramatic." But by then, he had already transferred the deed. Already filed the trust documents. Already charmed the lawyer I once trusted with my life. This is not just a story about betrayal. It's about unraveling illusions, about how love can rot in silence, about how the truth screams louder when spoken in whispers. It's about fighting to take back what was mine, not just my estate, but my name, my story, and my voice, and I'm going to tell it all. They say anesthesia lingers, it dulls your senses, confuses memories, distorts time. But I remember that moment with crystalline clarity. The lights above me buzzed softly, the air stank of antiseptic and something more sterile than clean, betrayal. I was between dreams and pain, floating in the space between sleep and awakening. When I heard him speak, "She's dramatic," he said, low and smooth, like a man commenting on the weather. I heard the nurse chuckle lightly. I didn't open my eyes. My body was broken. 3 ribs, a fractured wrist, a bruise blooming across my spine. The official story was that I slipped, that I tripped over the hem of my robe coming down the staircase. It was late, and the marble had just been waxed. A perfect accident. A believable one, but I didn't trip. Remember his hand brushing mine at the top of the stairs. I remember the look in his eyes, not panic, not anger. Something cooler. Resigned. Like he'd made a decision long before that night. The fall wasn't the beginning. That whisper wasn't the beginning either. But both were moments when I knew. When something inside me shifted from disbelief to certainty. They kept me in that hospital for 6 days. He came every morning, brought lilies I was allergic to, kissed my forehead with a stiffness that smelled of obligation. He told the nurses I'd always been sensitive, prone to exaggeration. They nodded at him like he was a hero. The estate lawyer came on the 3rd day. Unannounced. He brought papers for my peace of mind, said Henry had thought of everything, wanted to make sure I was taken care of in the event things got worse, asked to read them. They smiled at me like I was being cute. It wasn't until after the 5th night, after Henry had gone home, and the nurse with the sympathetic eyes slipped me a tablet with internet access, that I started looking deeper. My gallery, the one with my name still etched in the window, had been sold. Quietly. Transferred to a shell corporation 3 weeks before the fall. Our summer home in Maine? No longer in our name. Even my parents' land, the last thing they'd ever given me, was now part of something called Shelter Grove Holdings LLC, a name I didn't recognize but would come to loathe. By the time I left the hospital, I wasn't broken anymore. I was waking up, and Henry, my husband, my partner, the man who called me dramatic, he was about to find out just how theatrical I could be. Chapter 2 will uncover what she discovers at home, the subtle manipulation by Henry over the years, and the first person she turns to, someone Henry thought she'd forgotten. When I got home, everything smelled like him. Cedarwood and expensive silence. Henry had made sure the house was spotless, as if cleaning away the evidence could wash the guilt from the walls. My pillows were fluffed. My side of the bed untouched. He had even replaced the cracked tile on the front step, the one I used to trip over when we first moved in, when we still laughed in the mornings, but it wasn't my house anymore. I could feel it in the way the walls echoed back only his presence. He was in the kitchen when I arrived, slicing pears like he was auditioning for a lifestyle magazine. He looked up, startled, or pretending to be. "You're home early," he said. "I was going to pick you up tomorrow." I smiled like a woman who hadn't just uncovered a dozen forged signatures. I missed my own bed. He stepped toward me, arms open. I didn't move. Something flickered across his face. Maybe he felt it then, the shift. The quiet war. I spent that first night in the guest room, claiming I needed the firmer mattress. He didn't argue. Too easy. While he slept, I searched. The gallery sale had been disguised beneath 3 layers of transfers, shell companies, blind trusts. But Henry had never been as smart as he thought he was. Somewhere deep in the guest room closet, in the old mahogany drawer he forgot he left unlocked, was a folder. My folder. He'd kept copies of everything: deeds, wills, revised trusts. Maybe he liked looking at them. Maybe he got off on holding my life in his hands. There it was, a copy of my signature. Forged with impressive precision. On at least 3 documents. One of them dated the day I was hospitalized after a minor car accident last year. Another, signed while I was out of town visiting my sister. He'd been planning this for a long time. I took photos of everything. Every paper, every scribbled note, every post-it marked final version. I uploaded them to an encrypted drive. I wasn't just going to fight this. I was going to burn the stage he built and force him to perform on the ashes. The next morning, I made him breakfast. I've been thinking, I said sweetly, buttering his toast. Maybe we should update our wills again. Just to be safe. He smiled at me like I was the fool he thought I still was. Already ahead of you, darling. We're all covered. I leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Of course we are. That afternoon, I called Lillian, my college roommate. Now a probate lawyer, hadn't spoken in almost a decade, not since Henry made a scene about how unprofessional she was during a dinner party. I see now why he wanted her gone. She was the only person who ever saw through him, she answered on the 3rd ring. Julia? I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear someone say my name like it still belonged to me. I need your help. I said. It's bad. And then I told her everything. She didn't even hesitate. Come in tomorrow. Bring everything. But that night, something strange happened. I woke up to a sound. A soft shuffle. I crept out of bed and followed it to the hallway, and there, at the end, stood Henry. In the dark. Staring at the guest room door. He didn't see me. He was holding something in his hand, a lighter. I stepped back before he turned around. Heart pounding. He knew I'd found the drawer. I didn't sleep after that. I just lay there, wide awake, feeling the air shift every time Henry moved in the house. The image of him standing in the hallway with that lighter haunted me. I could still see the flick of silver in his hand, the way he stood so still, too. Still, like a man rehearsing something final. I didn't confront him. Not yet. That's what he wanted, for me to panic, to show my cards, to rush into a confrontation while he still controlled the stage. Instead, I acted like nothing had changed. The next morning, I left early, telling him I had a follow-up appointment at the hospital. He nodded, barely looking up from his phone, already absorbed in whatever plan he was stitching together next. Maybe another transfer. Maybe a final insurance policy, but I didn't go to the hospital. I went to Lillian. Her office was smaller than I expected, tucked behind a bookstore with peeling paint and a bell that jingled when I entered. She looked exactly the same: wild red curls, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that could unnerve even the most confident man. Which is exactly why Henry hated her. She pulled me into a hug the second she saw me. I kept waiting for you to call, she said. Something told me you'd need me one day. I showed her the photos, the documents, the forged signatures. She didn't even blink. This isn't just fraud, she said after scanning the files. It's premeditated. He's built an entire paper trail to make it look like you've been giving everything away piece by piece. I nodded. And now he's trying to erase the evidence. She sat back, exhaling slowly. We'll hit back. But we'll do it smart. Then she looked at me, really looked. Are you safe, Julia? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know anymore. Before I left, she gave me something, a tiny recording device, smaller than a coin. Just in case, she said. You need proof of intent. And if he says anything at all, this could be your lifeline. I wore it that night, tucked into the lining of my cardigan, pretending to read on the patio while Henry poured us both wine. He was charming. Calm. Predictable, but his eyes flicked toward the guest room door every few minutes. He didn't mention the drawer. Or the lighter. He was waiting for me to make the first move. You've been quiet, he said, handing me the glass. I'm still tired, I replied. The hospital drained me. He smiled, but his jaw twitched then. He said it, sometimes people imagine things when they're on painkillers. I read somewhere that morphine can cause paranoia. I looked at him carefully. Are you saying I imagined falling down the stairs? He held my gaze. I'm saying stress does strange things to the mind. Maybe you should rest more. Stop worrying so much. That was it. That was the crack. He was laying the groundwork for a breakdown. A story where I was unstable, confused, unreliable. I finished my wine in silence. Later that night, when he was in the shower, I checked the drawer again, empty, every paper, every folder, gone, except one dot tucked in the very back, almost as if it had been forgotten, was a receipt. A moving service. Scheduled for next week. Boxes. Storage. 2 locations. 1 out of state. He wasn't just stealing my estate, he was planning to vanish. The address on the receipt was scribbled in Henry's handwriting, but the name on the invoice wasn't his. It was someone I didn't recognize, a John Reeve. The kind of alias no one questions unless they're already suspicious. The kind that only exists to hide things. The storage facility was an hour away, tucked behind an industrial park off the highway, surrounded by weeds and silence. I waited until Henry left for his weekly golf game, which I now suspected had little to do with golf, and drove straight there. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I handed her the receipt. You're here for Unit 117? She asked, clicking at her keyboard. Got ID? I hesitated. I didn't have any that matched the name on the invoice. But I had something better. My husband sent me, I said, lowering my voice. He's handling a surprise gift for my birthday. Told me not to look, but I found the receipt. I just want to peek. I won't touch anything. She raised an eyebrow, then smiled, a knowing, almost pitying smile. They always say it's a surprise. Go ahead, hon. Back row, second. On the left. Unit 117 was smaller than I expected. Inside, it smelled like dust and cold plastic. There were 6 boxes, all taped tightly, stacked with disturbing precision. On top of one sat a suitcase I hadn't seen in years, my mother's. The one I thought I lost after her funeral. I opened it. Inside were photos. Hundreds of them. Some old, some recent. Me at the gallery. Me at the hospital. Me and Henry, laughing at a benefit gala 2 years ago. But the ones that made my blood freeze were the ones I didn't know existed, the photos of me alone, at home, asleep. In the shower. In the backyard at night. He'd been watching me. Documenting me. For years, I sank to the floor. What was he building? Why this archive? And then I found the envelope. It was marked with a name I hadn't said out loud in over 15 years. Alex Mercer. Alex was my first fiancé. The one I left for Henry. The one who disappeared a year after I got married. Everyone said he moved abroad. Changed numbers. Lost interest, but in that envelope were letters. Dozens of them. Addressed to me. Never opened. Never delivered. All postmarked between 1999 and 2004. All intercepted, all hidden here. My hands trembled. As I read the first one. Julia, I made a mistake. I should have fought for you harder. I've been trying to find you, but no one will tell me where you are. I don't believe what Henry said. Please. Call me. If you still remember me, call me. The phone number was crossed out. In Henry's handwriting, this wasn't just betrayal. This was erasure. He didn't just want my money. He wanted my story. My past. My relationships. My identity. Piece by piece, he had been isolating me from the world I once knew, curating a version of my life where only he remained at the center, sat there for hours, reading the letters, letting the weight of everything settle around me like ash. When I finally got home, Henry was in the kitchen again. Smiling. Like he always did. How was your day? He asked, pouring wine. I remembered something, I said. Oh. That summer in France. Remember the lavender fields? He looked up, surprised. Of course. You said we never went there. That I imagined it. He laughed. I don't remember saying that. But we did go. I found the photos. He paused, just for a second. Then smiled again. Maybe you're right. My memory's not perfect. I looked at him. Really looked. You ever wonder where Alex ended up? I asked softly. He didn't blink. No, he said. I haven't thought about him in years. But his jaw tightened. Just enough. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, not anymore, but because the truth had finally snapped into focus. I lay awake, watching the ceiling shift in the moonlight, going over every moment, every lie, every time Henry made me question my own memory. This wasn't just fraud. It wasn't just manipulation. It was psychological warfare, and I'd been the battlefield. In the morning, I didn't run. I didn't scream. I dressed like it was any other day. I poured the coffee. I even kissed him on the cheek. And when he asked what I had planned, I told him I was heading to the gallery for a meeting. He smiled. You still think of it as yours, he said. I smiled back. Old habits. But I wasn't going to the gallery. I was going to the lawyer. Lillian had everything prepared. The affidavits, the photos, the forged documents, the statement from the notary who Henry had quietly paid off. She'd even tracked down a digital trail from Henry's email confirming the shell corporations he'd used. It was all there. Legal firepower, stacked like dominoes, but even with all that, she looked at me carefully before we signed the motion. There's more, I said, handed her the envelope of Alex's letters. When she saw the name, her eyes widened. You knew him, I said. Everyone knew him, she whispered. He was your shadow in college. You lit up when you spoke about him. I told her everything, the storage unit, the suitcase, the surveillance photos. And then I asked the question I hadn't dared to speak out loud until now. What if he didn't just disappear? She said nothing for a long time. Then she picked up her phone. Let me make a call. By the time I got home, Henry was waiting in the living room. He looked relaxed, but there was a tightness in his voice. Your lawyer called the house. Something about filings. I sat down across from him, calm. I think you should sit down too, Henry. He didn't move. So I handed him the recorder. The one I wore the night he tried to rewrite my memory. The one with his voice on it. Talking about paranoia. Gaslighting me in real time, and then I gave him the photos. The forged documents. The moving receipt. The surveillance shots. The letters. His face changed slowly. A kind of quiet collapse. Like watching a dam crack in slow motion. You went through my things, he said. You went through my life. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. Then he said something I'll never forget. I didn't think you'd fight back. I laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was hollow, like something that had been buried too long finally rising. Then you never really knew me. He didn't beg. That would have made it easier. He just walked into the kitchen and poured himself a drink, hands shaking slightly. The silence stretched between us like an open wound. Lillian called that evening. The motion was filed. A judge had granted a temporary freeze on all assets. The gallery. The trust. The estate. Everything. He couldn't touch a cent without court approval, but that wasn't the end point. 3 days later, a private investigator working with Lillian found something else. A remote cabin in Vermont. Leased in Henry's name. Unoccupied. Sealed tight. Inside, a safe. Inside the safe, a passport belonging to Alex Mercer. Issued 10 years after his supposed disappearance. Never used. And next to it, a watch. The same watch Alex wore the day he last saw me. I didn't know what to feel: a grief? Rage? Relief. I only knew one thing: this wasn't about reclaiming my estate anymore. It was about reclaiming my name, my memory, my voice. Henry thought he could erase me, but I'm still here, and I'm the one telling the story now. Let him call me dramatic. The audience is listening, and the stage is mine.